All right, here's our first video in section 1.4. We're going to talk about all different types of real numbers, all the different types of numbers, absolute values of numbers, orders of numbers, so greater than, less than, stuff like that in this section. We're going to first talk about the different types of numbers or the different number sets. We have natural numbers and the way you naturally count. So natural numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So natural numbers are the way you naturally count, where it starts at 1 and goes up from there. We also have whole numbers. Whole numbers actually start at 0 and then go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there is a little bit of a difference between natural and whole numbers. Remember, natural numbers start at 1 and whole numbers start at 0. There are what we call integers. Integers consist of all whole numbers and their opposites, so positives and negative whole numbers. So really anything on the number line is what we call an integer. We have the set of all rational numbers, and then we have irrational numbers. Now, rational numbers can be written as any sort of fraction. They are terminating, so they stop, or repeating decimals. For example, I can say 2/3. That's a fraction. That's a rational number. I can say 0.5. Because that's a decimal that stops, we can actually make this into a fraction if you wanted to, and we can say 5/10 or 1/2. That's also a rational number. Or we can even take repeating decimals. 0.333333 repeating is really the same thing as 1/3. That's also a fraction or a rational number. So anytime we have a fraction, a decimal that stops or repeats, we call that a rational number. And actually, integers, whole numbers, and natural numbers are also all rational numbers because we can take any of those numbers and write it as a fraction. I don't know, like example 5. Can I write 5 as 5/1? So all of these are also still rational numbers. Now, if it can't be written as a fraction, or if it's a decimal that keeps going on forever and ever and ever and doesn't repeat itself, we call that an irrational number. Let me show you a flow chart that might kind of help you organize that information. So if we start down here at natural numbers, remember natural numbers start with 1 and go up. Or we have whole numbers if it includes 0, 1, and up. We have integers. That's any whole number, positive and negative, anything on the number line. All of those are underneath the rational number umbrella. Rational numbers are integers, they're whole numbers, they're natural numbers, they're even fractions or decimals that stop or repeat. All of those are real numbers. If it's not a rational number, then it's an irrational number. Now, irrational numbers are still real numbers. So all of these are underneath the real number category. You're either going to go down here to irrational or here to rational and then follow the flow chart down. Now, irrational numbers, remember, are any decimals that don't stop and don't repeat. For example, most of you have heard of pi before, right? 3.14 on and on and on and on. It doesn't repeat, it doesn't stop. Pi is an irrational number. Or if you put in your calculator the square root of 15, or the square root of 2 is 1.4142, and it keeps going and going and going and going and going. I can even have negative irrational numbers. Any decimal that keeps going and doesn't repeat is an irrational number. So if I give you a list of numbers, could you classify what each of those numbers are? For example, look at number 1 with me. Which numbers in the following group are whole numbers, integers, rational numbers, irrational numbers, and real numbers? So out of all of these numbers, which ones do you think are whole numbers? Remember, whole numbers start at 0. I remember that because whole has an O, and an O looks like a 0. So whole starts with 0 and goes up. So which one of these numbers are whole numbers? I said 0 and 52 are the whole numbers out of this group. Which one of these are integers? Remember, integers are anything on the number line, positive and negative numbers. I said negative 38, 0, and 52. Those are all numbers on the number line. What about rational numbers? Remember, rational numbers are any of the categories: natural, whole, integer, and then any fraction or decimal that stops or repeats. So I said negative 38 is a rational number. Negative 8/5 is still a rational number. That's a fraction. 0, 0.3, that little line means it's going to repeat, so 0.33333, any repeating decimal is a rational number. 4.5 is a terminating decimal, it stops. 4.5 is a rational number, and then 52 is a rational number. So if all of those are rational numbers, then which one of those are irrational numbers? They're decimals that don't stop and don't repeat. Well, it looks like there's only one out of this group, the square root of 30. If you were to put that in your calculator, it would spit out a decimal that kept going and going and going and didn't repeat. So the square root of 30 is an irrational number. All right, out of all of these numbers, which ones are real numbers? Well, if you remember from our flow chart, all of the numbers we're going to discuss are real numbers for now. Rational, irrational, integers, whole, natural, all of them are real numbers. All right, make sure you understand how to classify all the different types of numbers. Remember that whole numbers include 0, looks like a O looks like a 0. And then I remember natural numbers ends with an L, and L kind of looks like a 1. So make sure you know the difference between whole and natural as well.